Hey guys, this is a video for 8th grade. This is solving systems of equations by elimination. This also can be used for really anybody in algebra. Okay, so we've talked about solving systems of equations by graphing. We talked about solving systems of equations by substitution. Now we're talking about elimination, and more namely adding and subtracting. A little bit later we'll talk about multiplication. Okay, so the goal here in solving system equations by elimination is the keyword there, elimination. We want to eliminate one of the variables. Either we want to get rid of the x, or we want to get rid of y altogether. Just momentarily, so that we can find out the other variable. We can find out what the other variable equals to as a number, right? So if you look at your equation or your system here of equations, what you want to look for is something that's similar to both of them. Now, right off the bat, you should see negative 2y and positive 2y. Those things are opposites of each other. Okay? If we were to add both of those equations together, if we were to combine them to both, these two would basically cancel each other out completely. So the y would be eliminated. And that's the goal. The goal is to eliminate one of the variables so that in this case we could solve for the x. So what is x plus 5x? Well, that's 6x. And that's negative 19 plus 1. Well, that's negative 18. Now all you have here is a one-step equation. We solve for x, and then we have our value for x, and then we move on to find our y. So we're going to divide both sides by 6, right? Because 6x means 6 times x. So divide by 6. This cancels out completely. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So we've got x equals negative 3. And then in order to find out our y, because we know that solving systems equations, we're going to get an ordered pair. We're going to get an x and y ordered pair. So we need not only to know x, but we also need to know what y is. So we're going to take this number, this negative 3, we're going to plug it in. So we can plug it into the first equation. We can plug it in here where it says 5x, so 5 times negative 3. It doesn't matter really which one you pick. I typically pick the first one, but sometimes I pick the easier one too. So the first one seems a bit easier, so I'm going to put negative 3 where the x is up here. So it's going to be negative 3 minus 2y equals negative 19. And now I've got a two-step equation. Solve for y. So we're going to add 3 to both sides because we want to get rid of it on the left-hand side, right? The goal is to isolate the y. We want y to be all by itself, so we have to get rid of the 3. So we add 3 to both sides. We get negative 16 here. We get negative 2y, so negative 2 times y equals negative 16. Get rid of the coefficient like we did here. To get rid of the 6, we had to divide by 6. So then we'll get rid of negative 2. To separate that from the y, we got to divide by negative 2 because that's the opposite of multiplying, right? That's what this means, multiplication. We do the opposite to get rid of it. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. So we got y equals positive 8. So our solution is negative 3, 8. That is the solution. Okay, number 2. Here we've got 4y, 4y, so we can cancel out the 4y. The problem is they're both positive. So we can't simply just add them, because otherwise it should become 8y. So we're not going to be able to get rid of it. Now, if we add these two, the problem with these two is we would end up with a positive x, which is not necessarily bad, but it's not going to help us get any closer to the answer. Not if you want to take the elimination route. So what you could do instead of adding, right, because that's what we've done for number 1, you could also subtract. Subtract, if I can spell it correctly. Okay, so you can subtract. So you can subtract this, subtract this. But if I subtract this second equation from the first one, what happens is everything that's here is being subtracted from the top part. So really with this minus sign, it doesn't just apply to this negative 2x or this positive 4y. It also applies to this 8 as well. So it's 3x minus negative 2x. It's 4y minus 4y. it's 18 minus 8. But some people have a hard time with that. Some people forget to go over here, and they combine them, and they off to the races, so to speak. So what I do is I typically have my students, instead of doing that each one, which is not necessarily bad if you can do it, if you're okay with that, I just typically would like to change all the signs in that second equation. So instead of negative 2x, this makes it a positive 2x. Instead of a positive 4y, it's a minus 4y. Instead of a positive 8, it's a minus 8, or a negative 8. And then what I do is I add them, like I did in number 1, because when I add them, we know that this is going to cancel out completely. I've got 5x left here. This is going to become 10. Divide both sides by 5. I've got x equals 2. And I just simply plug this back into my first equation to find out my value for y. I get a two-step equation here, obviously, because I've simplified this a little bit more. Subtract 6 from both sides. I've got 4y equals 12. And then you divide both sides by 4. Y equals 3. I've got my solution. Good deal. 2, 3. And then you can always check it by plugging into the other equation if you like. All right, and last but not least is this one. Very similar to number 2. If you can't subtract 5x from 5x, otherwise it would become a bigger negative number. It would be a negative 10x. So we don't want to do it that way. So what we want to do is we want to basically subtract, not subtract, I should say, we want to make this a positive. So the only way to make this a positive is if I subtract, or I should say, if I change all the signs. So if I subtract this from the top, basically what happens is all the signs are going to change. So this ends up becoming positive 5x, this will end up being negative 3y or minus 3y, and this will end up being minus 19. 11 minus 19. So what I typically do in this situation is I just change all the signs. It's a little bit easier, and you can do that from here. You can, if you want, you can just change the signs, I mean quite literally right here. But I'm going to rewrite it just so that it might be a little bit easier for some. Okay, and then I add them. Okay, so this is going to cancel out completely. This becomes 4y. This becomes negative 8. Divide both sides by 4. Y equals negative 2. Now that I get my value for y, I can find my value for x. So I'm going to plug that in to where my y is. Right? Simplify. Negative 5x minus 14 equals 11. Two-step equation. Add 14 to both sides. This becomes 25. Negative 5x equals 25. Solve for x. Divide both sides by negative 5. And then we are done. We got x equals negative 5. So it's going to be negative 5, comma, negative 2. And that's it. That's going to be the solution to this system. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Those are just 3 examples that might be helpful. Hopefully, I'll be doing more on not just adding and subtracting, but in the next lesson about multiplication. All right. God bless. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.